there. Got me podcast plant. You've got to have a fake plant if you're a podcast. Hello, I am just finished a run. So as I was running, all the answers to your questions just were in my head. So I thought, you know what? Right, just go on now. As you're aware, or you might not be aware, I am going to produce a series over the next few weeks during the summer months because people are busy. So getting guests into studios through summer is proving difficult. And I'm listening to you guys tell me that you want more kind of insight into my working profession. I am wearing the most unprofessional outfit when it comes to interpreting. And you know what? That's fine because I've just finished a run and had all these things linked to questions that you've asked me about interpreting in my head as I was running because that's when they come. And I just thought, you know what? Jump on camera now. Don't bother about getting changed. And if anything, it can remind you that as interpreters, we are just human. As interpreters, we have our own little quirks. We have our own little hobbies, interests, insights, experiences, flavours. We are not meant to be the same. We are not meant to look the same. We are not meant to kind of work the same way because you know, every deaf person is different, every interpreter is different. Yes, we have professional standards that we need to try and adhere to, but in terms of you and what makes you you, sometimes that's really hard kind of getting to grips with because who wants to get to know yourself? You know, it is hard. There's a lot of self-reflection involved with the journey of becoming an interpreter. This might be something you wanted to listen to because you are thinking about becoming a trainee interpreter, and it might just be something you're thinking about in terms of learning sign language because today I've hopefully made a good title where you're going to understand that this is going to zone in on dyslexia and why having dyslexia actually made me a better signer. It does prove difficult sometimes as an interpreter, but there is so many more positives that I've learned to kind of appreciate that I'm okay with it now. I'm really confident in my dyslexia, and when you know my clients know I can't spell and things like that, it's frustrating potentially for them, and you know I want to be able to spell, but I also don't want to change my dyslexia because of all the amounts of positive things that it's given me. So stay tuned, we're going to look at that. And then also someone's messaged me asking me to kind of give them some tips because they said they're finding their level 6 overwhelming and too hard to get their brain into gear, having short-term memory. Any tips? You know, exams are daunting, nerve-wracking, and it can just really affect your performance, can't it? Because language is more than just something we learn. It becomes part of us. So if that embodiment of who we are is anxious as hell and just like got imposter syndrome and self-esteem issues and all this stuff going on, it's going to hinder our language. It's going to hinder our performance. So let's get into it, and hopefully you will feedback to me on Hayley Brown & Co, the Instagram channel, where I can then expand further on these kind of topics for your pleasure or non-pleasure, whatever you decide. So yeah, in terms of my experience of dyslexia, I kind of grew up being one of those kids that did quite well at school, mainly because I had a really shit kind of childhood with my parents didn't have it easy, and I was just trying to make life easy for them, so I would really try at school, but I always struggled. And when I say try, I think I was a bit of a hustler because I used to copy my friends' work a lot, and you know, things like that. It was just, I just seemed to manage to get by. So it wasn't until I went to university, and I think I got into university with my A levels, but I did the foundation degree route, which meant that I had to do 1 year foundation degree. That got me to a level 2 or something, and then I started my actual real degree, which was fine for me. I had a young baby, you know, and I'd never signed before in my life before I decided I was going on this path. So it was a very crazy path to choose. Now, when I started the degree, the foundation degree was fine. It got me to level 2. I literally learned to fingerspell. I got told that my non-manual features were good. You know, I was quite an expressive person. And it was all a lot of vocabulary. Didn't have the apps mind back then. Didn't have the online content that you have now. So there was a lot of writing lists, and then writing funny little pictures that looked like hand shapes to visually remind me of what the hand shape was or the sign. But yeah, when I started my first assignment, I handed it in, and the lecturer kind of went, "Ooh, do you think you're a bit dyslexic? Can't really understand a word of this," which was quite interesting, because when I'd done my philosophy and ethics A level and my psychology A level, I seemed to get good marks, but that kind of writing style was talking. I can talk, and I can reflect, and I can philosophize, if that's the right word, and that was my style. So that seemed to match that type of essay. But when I went to uni and writing academically, it was like, babes, you ain't getting it, and you're spelling shite. So I went for a dyslexia assessment, and they were like, yeah, but I am only borderline. So I will say that, you know, it was never a major concern. However, I feel like it flags up probably a lot more in my sign language perception and my spelling, rather than my English and my written work. And that's potentially because it's my second language. It's bound to. You know, my brain's having to do a lot more work with sign language. So I definitely do see a lot more struggle with my finger spelling than my spelling. However, now I think everyone's becoming a bit lazy with spelling because of AI, Grammarly, things like that. So again, it's a journey. Changes happen. One year you'll be great, the next year you won't, and then you'll be great again. And I think we've all got to accept that, you know, nothing's fixed really. Everything's always changing. So I remember being given these stickers for my assignments that said, "You're dyslexic, right? Stick this on your essay. You won't get penalised for lack of grammar and spelling." And one of the lecturers, teachers, people, let's say, I'm not going to name names, they kind of turned around to me and basically implied that those stickers don't work with this course, because what you're doing is a professional qualification and it's a language degree. Therefore, you know, it's half English, half BSL. If you don't get the English right, regardless of whether you're dyslexic, you aren't performing to a level in which requires you to be at a professional standard. So that really knocked the crap out of me, because I just thought it isn't even about inclusivity and kind of like acceptance of, I've got dyslexia, so go easy on me. It was about serving a community that deserved to have adequate professionals interpret for them. So I can completely relate to that feeling of wanting to accept yourself as a dyslexic person, or someone that struggles with spelling, or, you know, reception of finger spelling, or that cognitive processing maybe being too slow or what have you, and accepting that that's who you are, but also just acknowledging the fact that you believe deaf people deserve adequate interpreters. And that's a really hard kind of internal battle in us as interpreters, because we want the best for the community that we serve, but there's part of us that has to accept we're human, and that we carry inadequacies as mothers, as interpreters, and, you know, we're not going to get it right. So we are going to fail the people that we serve from time to time. And that is just part of the game. And I think with the dyslexia, I think getting the diagnosis helped me somewhat, because, you know, I'm working for a community that is classed as disabled. Therefore, you know, I should give myself the grace and the kind of support that I give to the disabled community that I support. And when you think about yourself in that way, yeah, it takes some time to allow yourself to kind of fully forgive yourself for not being perfect. So without being all doom and gloom, Later on, I went to then do my first job when I, qualified as a trainee interpreter. I got a job for an organisation, which was the best decision because going freelance straight out of uni would have proved very difficult. And they offered a lot of support. And during our first meeting with, my line manager, who'd been an interpreter for years, because that's another thing, when you're training, you have such little interaction with interpreters that you're trying to become. It's really difficult. It is really difficult. I remember the module where I got to shadow someone, and that was just the most surreal experience because it was the first time me interacting with an interpreter, and that's not normal in a profession. That is not normal, to trying to become a professional of someone you probably have little interaction with. So I probably will try and create some kind of community groups because I do think that's really important. Completely gone off track, which is what I do, and you'll learn that that's what I do. Maybe one day I will talk about ADHD, but I'm not diagnosed with that because I'm sure you're aware the waiting list is like ridiculous. Visualise, Hayley, visualise, where were you? Completely lost my train of thought. Starting my degree. Oh yes, so I went to get so I started my first job, and during the meeting I kind of like plucked up she was like, is there anything you want to discuss with me? Anything at all? Do you want to talk about anything? And I was just like, is there anything we can do to support you? She said. And I was like, well, I have been kind of diagnosed with dyslexia. And she was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we all have. And she literally said it like that. She was like, we've all got dyslexia. And she was like, that's why you're good at signing. And I'd never heard that. So I was like, what? And she basically handed me all these books. And she was like, read these books on dyslexia. You're going to understand how you got here and why you were interested in sign language. So I was like, oh, amazing. Because she was basically pointing out everyone in this office that were working interpreters saying, yeah, we've all got dyslexia. Dyslexia is not so much a hindrance, it's your power, it's your visual processing skill. You see things visually, and sometimes that proves difficult when it comes into written words, spelling and what have you. So I did a bit of research on it, and I was just like, damn, why did no one tell me this before? I developed this insecurity about it. So before I give you any tips on working with dyslexia as an interpreter, I'm just going to go through kind of the positives of having dyslexia so that you can feel good about yourself, because if you feel good about yourself, you're going to perform better. So dyslexic people, they are big thinkers, let's say. They can comprehend things and look at the bigger picture. Now, this is literally what Google or ChatGPT will say. If you say, give me 10 benefits on having dyslexia, this is what it will come up with. And I'm going to tie them into the interpreting profession. So being a big thinker is really important because the deaf community is so diverse and so kind of, let's use the word intersectional. Don't know if that's a word, but the intersectionality of someone that is deaf and the different levels to who they are, their day-to-day life, it is really a big picture that you've got to get your head around. So like the narrow-minded person, it's not gonna help them, okay? So being a big thinker is a good thing. Creative problem solving. So everyday life is about problem solving. When you're working as an interpreter, you're not in the same place every day. And the problems that you have to solve, because you've grown up as a hearing person, they're not going to be obvious problems to solve at all. So if you, on one of your jobs, something pops up and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You kind of have to not only empathize with the person who's probably having the problem and that's causing you a problem, you also have to understand the big picture again, but also, you have to be creative because these aren't problems that you will have seen a lot of because you've not necessarily been in the deaf community. Storytelling ability, a natural flair for narrative and often expressive communication. Now, obviously, when it comes to interpreting, that's one of the biggest things that we do. We take kind of literal words English and we put them into a visual format, and sometimes that means telling a story or giving an expansion of meaning because it doesn't translate without that. And the most understanding we do as humans is through story. We are wired for story. Our brains literally create stories. For example, electrical signals will fire off when you're asleep, and we've made a dream automatically. We love stories. So if you've got a natural ability to do that, it's only going to help you as an interpreter. So it is your power. Resilience, because you've had to, I don't know, go through the school system with a disability such as dyslexia, you will have learnt to, you know, I don't know, I'd say dodge around, but you will have learnt to be resilient, to kind of choose your battles is what I like to say. You know, not be able to do this, but then excel at that. Not be able to, you know, potentially excel at this, but manage to get through this. Like, there's a level of resilience that exists within you. Verbal communication. Many have strong verbal skills and persuasive and engaging speakers. Well, that's good, because I know for me, being able to change the way I speak to match the person that I'm speaking for is definitely a skill you want in an interpreter. And if it's AI is saying dyslexic people have it more, let's celebrate it, guys. Emotional intelligence and empathy is often high, which you need when you're an interpreter, because you need to read a room. You need to know kind of the differences between individuals that you're with day in, day out that are so different. You're facilitating communication, which is a big thing. It's a big responsibility, but it's also an intrinsic thing, like a dynamic thing. I don't know if I'm getting my words right, but you know what I mean. It's like you're there existing in people you don't know. And if you've got that strong intuition and gut feeling, that is a power that you shouldn't overlook. Like, that's good. You can read a room. And I always used to think, actually, like, my lecturers would talk about kind of prejudices and discrimination and stuff within, you know, the deaf community and the Equality Act and things like that. And then on the flip side would be telling us, you've got to use your kind of intuition and prejudices, sorry, I can't say that, prejudices, to be able to determine how you go about things in a booking, because it will be someone you've never met. So you've got to kind of like take your cues for who they are, how they dress, what style of signing they've got, what's the circumstance, and you've got to use that to kind of prepare you to be their interpreter. And I was like, that's so like, you're basically telling us to be prejudiced, which can, I mean, it doesn't really pose a difficulty now with me, but I remember being a student thinking, oh, that's not right, that doesn't feel right. But so hopefully now you feel a little bit more kind of accepting of the fact that you've got dyslexia. And although it might piss deaf people off when you ask them to repeat a spelling, or, you know, I've got some lovely clients though that kind of they just know, like, I'm going to type it to you, Hayley. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm going to write it down for you, Hayley, because I can't be finger spelling everything and you asking what. You know, but I have a load of other good qualities that people like. So I think it's just being kind to yourself. And I remember walking out of bookings, crying my eyes out, because I kid you not, they could have been spelling dog, D-O-G. But because my brain was going, the spelling, it would just shut down. And I kid you not, they'd be like, what level are you? What level are you? And if someone says, what level are you? That's automatically going to just go, shut us down, shut us down, shut us down. Her brain's fucked off on holiday. It's gone. It's gone. It's got out of there. And you're left there, brainless, going, like, honestly, like, you'd walk out of there, just your confidence gone, your self-esteem knocked. It's part of the game, guys. It is part of the game. So I'm going to pause there on dyslexia. I probably will do another episode. I will really go, I think I will do another episode because I've waffled quite a bit on this, but I'm going to do another episode where I'll talk about how having sign language in school is going to solve so much for the hearing population that have dyslexia. But I'm not going to go into that now because you will get me going. Like, I will not be able to stop. But now I'm going to talk about a message that came in about short-term memory and just kind of like feeling overwhelmed with the level up to level 6, because it is a big jump, massive jump. And it's almost like you've got to remember all the signs, but then also apply all this kind of intrinsic style. I don't know if that's the right, it's definitely not the right theoretical word that you'll find in the sign language academic books, but it's kind of a style. Your flow, your piecing together of things, concepts, your dance, your routine, your way of just communicating. It is something that I think happens around the level 6, because before that you're just kind of absorbing the vocabulary, piecing together the sentences, understanding the concept translations of like how they can apply to the structural difference. But yeah, with level 6, it's more about getting your flow going. So I think with short-term memory issues, that can be hard because, you're trying to do two things at once, aren't you? You're trying to remember all the signs and kind of like sign in a less chunky way that's more kind of flowy. And I would say that my biggest tip for that is, you just need to get to a place where your vocab kind of toolbox is so used that you're not thinking about what the sign is so much, if that makes sense. And I would say that only comes with practice. Kind of, when we say a word, it comes out our mouth. We don't think about finding that word. That cognitive process isn't happening. So like, I know it's sad and it's annoying for you to hear, and I haven't got this magical solution like, do this and you'll be fine. Like, the more you sign, the more you will think less about what is the sign. And then that will leave enough cognitive space for, okay, how can I sign this all together so it flows nicely and I can really engage? And then when that's, comfortable, then you can really kind of enjoy things a little bit more and stop stressing and kind of like enjoy the communication that you love to do. And that's why you started this, because you love communicating. But it comes over a long period of time, and we are not in no rush, guys. We need to be at peace with ourselves, and that is part of the journey. That is part of this beautiful lesson of learning to slow down and be exactly at the level that you're supposed to be at the time in which you're supposed to be at. There is no set in stone way of doing this. Oh, on year 3, I'm going to be level 3 and I'm going to be communicating in this way. It doesn't work like that. Your journey is unique to you. It's unique to how you process things, the people you have around you. It's language. It means it's part of you. It's a muscle. Some people are going to like grow muscle one way, another person's going to grow muscle another way. It's very different. Now, I remember talking to quite a few teachers, and they really hated when people use SSE. And you can understand why people are kind of a little bit about SSE, because you can see the richness of BSL. You can see it in theatre interpreting. You can see it in, deaf performers, and just, when you meet people that have just excelled in life and academic ways, sometimes their BSL is just beautiful, and so you can understand why people that have fought for the language of BSL would be a little bit reluctant. And we were encouraged to kind of disregard and not do SSE as much as possible, because obviously my first language is English, so when my signing style developed, it came out very SSE. So we were always told to try and, think outside the box. So a lot of the time you will spend trying to not be SSE, because you want to learn BSL. But that being said, when it comes back to kind of managing your short-term memory, I do feel like when I started vlogging in SSE, because I was just waffling and using my hands and kind of producing the vocab in a very natural, waffly, do it without thinking kind of way, it built up my vocab toolbox so much that I was able to then translate better into BSL with a bit more of a kind of natural flow. That might not work for everyone else. I am not a qualified teacher. I'd just like to make that clear before I get cancelled, because you know how people can go on. This is my personal experience. For me, personally, when I vlogged in SSE, my BSL grew a little bit better. So have I got any tips and advice when it comes to short-term memory? I think writing things down. I would write as I'm watching sometimes. Sometimes I would draw on my hand what I'm finger spelling, maybe. Sometimes I would draw. But because I'm I'm a doer, I'm an active visual processor, I have to draw pictures. It's hard to know how to give tips on short-term memory because everyone's different, and unless I know what you're wanting me to apply that to. So when you do send in these questions, please just get really specific, because it just helps me be able to kind of give you some insight as to how I'd handle it. Obviously, like I said, I am not an expert by any stretch. I'm not saying I am this amazing interpreter. I'm just saying I am someone that knows how to communicate, reflect, and get things, conversations flowing. And this is all this is. This is not me telling you how to do things. This is just me conversating with you. So hopefully you feel better about things and you can kind of figure out your answers. People, experts, this kind of intellectual property we all have, it's all a load of bloody crap. We're getting robbed of community because we're told to remotely work, and then community's been sold at us by us all becoming personal brands. And the reality is we just need to talk things through a lot more. So this is what this is. So no question is stupid. But when it comes to short-term memory, you just really have to understand that your brain is a machine. You've got to allow it some grace. You've got to be forgiving on yourself. The more forgiving you are to yourself, the more better your performance will be. That is 100% fact. Your anxiety will affect how your brain remembers or thinks. And actually, I've just remembered the point that I wanted to make about short-term memory when someone says they're having problems with it. Yes, it will be a problem in this environment when you're doing an exam, your short-term memory. And, even professionally speaking as interpreters, sometimes you do need to have good memory. But realistically, actually, as an interpreter, you are taking in so much information and releasing it. The skill of being able to get rid of things that you don't need is actually really good. Like they say, don't they, that the higher intellectual people are people that can just absorb information and get rid of what they don't need, allowing the space for more. So a short-term memory might seem bad at some points, but actually, is it that you've just got a high filtering system and you're learning to filter through the things you need to know, and that will come with practice. And once you've known something once, i.e. when you've interpreted one thing, you may have interpreted a training session on, I don't know, strangulation. You're not going to forget that. There's certain things that you will remember. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not all bad if you have got short-term memory, because, like I said, we need our brains to be clear to be able to function. So the ability to be able to take in information and get rid of it is actually really bloody good. If somebody asks me, sometimes I might have interpreted for 3 hours on a topic and someone asked me a question about it. I don't know. I was interpreting it, I was processing it, translating it, but as soon as I needed to let it go, I got rid of it. So that's just something to think on. I don't know. But it's not going to serve you well, obviously, in exams and things like that. So with short-term memory, You need to find the answers that work for you. I never forget trying to recite or remember things, and I would use like 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, 6 sticks, 7 heaven, 8, and I would then like visualize the number next to the kind of thing I was visualizing, and things like that, tricks like that, to help you visualize things. Like the sign for green is this. I'd envisage green snot being like wiped down a sleeve, or I don't know, like obviously the sign for M is a visual sign, but like you can be so creative with how you remember these things in a visual way. But it's got to come from you. There's no real way. I mean, maybe I could piece together a load of signs and how I remember them. I don't know. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I'm just waffling about I hope I'm not got an annoying voice, because anyway. So I'm going to wrap this up, and hopefully you've kind of enjoyed it. Like I said, I will do one on a bit more about dyslexia, because there's so much to say about dyslexia and the parallels that exist with learning sign language. If you do want more tips, you're going to have to be more specific. You're going to have to give me some examples, and then I can expand a little bit further, because I do feel like I just waffled a lot. But anyway, going to get out my sweaty clothes, edit this podcast so that it's worthy to go everywhere. Sometimes I don't know how I'm doing this, but if you keep supporting, I'll keep producing. I'll catch you later on Inadequate Mother, the podcast where we interpret everything into BSL and we waffle with Hayley about whatever she wants to waffle about. Mwah.